People who are living in the most impacted areas right now feel like they're living on another planet. I spoke with a friend of mine in Asheville, North Carolina earlier today on an old-fashioned phone, by the way. Prema said, "We have no water, no power, no Wi-Fi. We're bathing in the creek, boiling water to drink. There's supposed to be food and water tents, but we can't access info on where they're located." And she says the roads are filled with trees and power lines, so we can't get there anyway. We'd love for you to give us a real-time update, if you would, on what's happening on the ground here and when people like Prema will get some information on how they can help themselves.
Thanks. Yeah, the situation, especially in parts of North Carolina, but really across a number of states, is absolutely shocking. And of course, the best information for anyone directly impacted is going to come from local responders, local authorities. But what I can say from the transportation perspective on the federal side is that we have been engaged with the state leadership, with our folks on the ground, really from the early phases of this, to make sure that we can target resources to help restore that normalcy. You mentioned a number of roads. We're finding reports of hundreds of roads that have been compromised, affected by landslides, mudslides, flooding, as well as a number of bridges that have either been compromised or need to be inspected. I-40, I-26, including in key parts of North Carolina and Tennessee, impacted. And it's going to be a while before that sense of normalcy returns. But crews are working very quickly to assess the damage and to clear away obstruction. We're able to provide funding to help make sure that that is never an obstacle to quick action, something that unfortunately is a tool we've had to use many times, most notably recently with the ship strike in Baltimore. But I've reached out to the governors of 6 impacted states, and our in-state personnel have been working to help make sure that those assessments take place. The first priority, of course, is safety, making sure that a bridge is in fact safe before it's cleared for traffic to travel on it, making sure that those roads aren't compromised as well. But first and foremost, our hearts go out to everybody who's been impacted. And President Biden has asked every part of this administration to be there for as long as it takes, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Well, how long, Mr. Secretary, do you expect it will take? You mentioned it could be quite a while until there's a return to normalcy in these areas when it comes to actual transit infrastructure. What timeline do you think is realistic, and frankly, what cost?
Well, the timeline will be dictated by safety, and that's part of what the hundreds of inspections that are already getting underway are going to tell us. When is it a case of simply being able to certify that, for example, a rural bridge is good to go? When is it in a condition that means there's going to need to be a limit on the loads that can go on that bridge till it can be reinforced? When do you have a situation where a bridge may look okay, but actually it has been undermined by the floodwaters and has to be closed completely? We can't say in advance what those inspections are going to reveal safety-wise. But what we can say is we're going to make sure that the availability of federal dollars is not an obstacle to quick action. I expect the price tag will be enormous. This certainly in terms of a natural disaster outpaces anything so far mathematically that I've seen in terms of highway funding requests likely to come in. Now, we do have an emergency relief fund for this purpose. It will be able to respond to the immediate needs, but I don't see how we get the funding that's going to be needed overall without turning to Congress. I know even now there are bipartisan conversations beginning about how to put that request together.
Well, I'd like to ask you about that, Mr. Secretary. Among some of the other topics we'd like to get into, is it time to call lawmakers back? Do you think that that's something that we will see between now and the election? Otherwise, the people impacted by this storm could be waiting quite a long time.
Well, again, we do have billions of dollars available in the emergency relief fund. So just strictly speaking for the U.S. DOT, we're not looking at a run on the bank in the next few days or weeks. But we do face a bigger structural issue if Congress doesn't replenish that fund to be able to keep up with demands. Now, we have an authority called quick release. That means that we can get a very quick turn on some of these dollars. But at the end of the day, when you talk about the level of destruction that we are witnessing, that some communities are still assessing the level of damage, I just don't see how it's going to happen without a lot of concerted bipartisan action from across the country and from across the aisle.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why this timing is so difficult, not only because Congress is not in session, but also because, sir, of something that could happen at a minute past midnight, just hours from now. 45,000 dock workers on ports along the East Coast and Gulf are set to go on strike unless some last-minute agreement can be reached. These are ports that handle imports of goods that may be needed in some of these areas affected by Hurricane Helene. Is that factoring into the conversations at all from your understanding? And frankly, what can be done to secure those supply chains if this strike does indeed happen?
It's certainly something that adds to what is already the major importance of America's ports, and it's why we have been engaging the parties really for months, as it's been known that this deadline was approaching, because it will take the parties coming to terms. That means the ocean carriers and the ports and the dock workers, in order to prevent a strike like that. Now, if you think about the timelines of ocean shipping, obviously they're very different from the timelines associated with something like air freight, and the stocks that you expect to see aren't a kind of a day-by-day thing. But it doesn't take long before you would really feel the impacts of that. Now, we've established tools here at the Department of Transportation to help manage some of the very different supply chain issues that we've seen, starting with COVID, then what happened on the Red Sea, issues with water levels in the Mississippi River and the Panama Canal, and now the potential for labor action and the impact that that would have. It means we've got a dialogue with a number of logistics and shipping players who weren't all talking to us or to each other before we built up some of these relationships and some of these tools as a department. Just today had another convening that my colleagues at DOT brought together with about 60 different players across logistics and supply chains to make sure that we're mapping everything and anything that needs to happen in terms of adjustments or flexibilities across road, rail, and different ports across the United States. But certainly the best thing that could happen is for the parties to quickly come to terms, to do that before midnight and for there to be no work stoppage.
Well, yeah, we're talking about basically half the imports coming into the United States that these East Coast and Gulf Coast ports are receiving. Mr. Secretary, this really speaks to the focus of your job right now. Could you be more specific about the contingency plans that you're making to avoid another snarling of our supply lines and avoid another inflationary experience that we all remember from our ports?
Well, again, we've been using tools that we've built up, a new multimodal freight office created by the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, regular convenings, a new tool that we established called Flow, which helps to map the longer forecast for what's happening with ups and downs of container shipping, engaging with beneficial cargo owners, the shippers, the store chains and others that actually have the goods coming across on those containers, and understanding better the positioning that they've had. Now, there was some activity over the spring and the summer with the anticipation of the possibility of an issue on the East Coast, which led some cargo to be directed to the West Coast instead. But there was really no substitute for the ports being up and running. That's why the ports are where they are. And again, the most important thing is going to be for the carriers, the shippers, and the workers to come to terms so that everybody can be working and goods can move smoothly.
Well, Mr. Secretary, this is just one example of what seems to be broader labor strife in transportation. We've seen it in just the last few years with rail. We've seen it with cars. Now we're seeing it, obviously, at the ports. We're seeing it, too, with plane makers, as the strike is still ongoing of the Boeing machinist, now entering its third week. What exactly do you see happening here thematically, and could it reshape American transportation moving forward?
Yeah, we've definitely seen a bigger, broader pattern in recent years. It's been characterized by these businesses in those sectors doing very well, a lot of profitability, certainly when you talk about shipping or when you talk about railroading, and workers insisting on participating in those earnings, and frankly, having a president who supports the idea that these contracts should arrive on terms that are working for business, but also that are working for workers and allowing them a chance to participate in these sometimes record-breaking profits. That's what you saw, for example, recently with a historic deal that was reached with American Airlines and their flight attendants. We've seen a major raise going to rail workers, and also an issue that was not resolved at the time of the threats of a strike with rail workers a couple of years ago. At the time, only about 5% of them had access to sick leave. Right now, that's about 90%. And we were pushing for the railroad companies that can get that last 10% done to get together with their unions and make that happen. But there's no question that you see a period where workers are seeking to participate in the economic growth that's happening. You could obviously say the same in terms of the historic deal that was reached with auto workers. And look, when you have historic profits, and you look at ocean shipping, it became an unbelievably profitable industry over recent years. Then, of course, you're going to see workers seeking to participate in that to make sure that they're getting a share of that. The whole idea of collective bargaining is to reach an agreement on something that is consistent with the business thriving and empowers the workers to thrive. We've seen that happen time and time again as the result of collective bargaining. And it's what the president hopes and expects to see here as well.
Well, you must, Mr. Secretary, you must feel like you're running the Labor Department over the course of this conversation today. So I guess I'd have to ask you, ahead of tomorrow night's vice presidential debate, in our remaining moment, I know this is something that you've been involved in here. What is the message when it comes to labor that will win swing state votes?
Well, in this capacity, I can't speak about the campaign and election side of things. But what I will say is that you do have an administration that is proudly pro-worker. The president prides himself on being the most historically pro-labor president in modern times. And again, he's also demonstrated, given the record profitability and economic growth that we've seen, that being pro-worker can be consistent with business thriving too. Certainly, you're right, I've been involved in a lot of labor matters, but I don't want to take any credit from our acting Secretary of Labor, Julie Su, who has been doing an enormous amount of work, both in this particular case, engaging the different parties to help them make progress at the table when it comes to the dock workers, and more generally just doing a fantastic job helping to make sure that we have economic growth and worker empowerment at the same time.